Hello, everyone. If you could please take your seats, we're ready to get started again. And it worked. I can't believe it. Okay. My name is Dr. Gwen Marchand, and I'm an associate professor here in the College of Education in the Department of Educational Psychology and Higher Education. And I'm honored to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Ms. Ann Whalen. Ann serves as a senior advisor to the Secretary with delegated duties of the Assistant Secretary in the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education in Washington, D.C. Ms. Whalen's career includes work with the Chicago Public Schools as special assistant to U.S. Secretary Arne Duncan and over 5 years with the Obama administration within the U.S. Department of Education. While at the Department of Education, Ann was the director of the Implementation and Support Unit, managing a 35-member team and a portfolio of over $50 million in grant programs. In addition, her experience includes work with education administration policy and partnerships with states to ensure college preparation of students. She's known to be a champion of students in Chicago, public schools, and at the federal level. So I'm honored to introduce our next speaker, Ms. Ann Whalen. Thank you, Ann.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to join everyone here today to be part of such an important conversation. And I would like to say one of my first takeaways is that to get a better title, I need to go work for Google, because my title is almost impossible. So to give you just a little context for what I do, I am delegated the duties of the Assistant Secretary for P12 policy and implementation. So that's all the work around No Child Left Behind, waivers, accountability, migrant education, impact aid, and 21st century. So I have a pretty large portfolio, and I know a little bit about a lot, but not a lot about a little. I would just like to, again, say what an honor it is to be here today, and particularly thank Dean Metcalf for just this amazing opportunity to be part of such an important conversation. What my bio did not describe is that I actually worked for the Obama administration for 5.5 years, and then took a year off to sleep, to see my family, and then come back again. So I just restarted at the department this past summer. And I say this to say how much I realize how important this work really is, and how tiring it can be, and just how it's vital that we take a step back, kind of reflect on where we are, what we've done, and where we need to go in order to revitalize our engines to get back to it again. So I appreciate this opportunity to be part of that very important conversation. So what I would like to do this morning is to talk a little bit about the progress that has happened at a national level and a state level, and then go into what we see as future opportunities in the next few months and years to come in education reform. So at the national level, over the past 6 years, we've really focused on kind of a handful of key priority areas, and they're probably very familiar. I heard them reflected in the governor's speech this morning, but they are increasing access to high-quality early learning opportunities for all children. They're ensuring that every child has access to college and career-ready standards and opportunities. They're about ensuring that there are accountability systems that provide meaningful support and intervention, particularly in our schools that need them the most. It's about ensuring that there are supports and resources for great leaders and great teachers, and that includes both recruitment, pipelines, and retention throughout the whole trajectory of the career. And it's also ensuring that there's opportunities for innovation at the local level, so that there's space to know that there's times to practice, there's times to renovate, there's experimenting a little bit to figure out how we can improve and do things better. I think we heard a lot about that from the previous speaker. And the great news is that we've actually come quite a long way. So right now we have over 32 states that expanded their high-quality preschool programs. So that's both in pre-K and in kindergarten, half-day and full-day slots, and that's really important for all of our children. We have over 40 states that have adopted college and career-ready standards and aligned high-quality assessments. We have over 40 states that have modified and moved away from their one-size-fits-all model of accountability to models that take into account their local priorities and multiple measures of performance while ensuring dramatic interventions in the lowest performing schools and their schools with the largest achievement gaps. And over 40 states have taken steps to develop more meaningful teacher and leader feedback and support systems that take into account multiple measures, like evidence of student learning, observations of professional practice, and student surveys, similar to what Nevada is doing here with its student and stakeholder engagement measures. And this has made dramatic difference for students. Nationally, graduation rates are at an all-time high at 81%. And moreover, racial, income, and disability gaps are closing. The number of dropout factories, so those schools that chronically failed to graduate our students, have been cut nearly in half since 2008, and there are roughly 1.1 million more students of color enrolling in college since 2008. And here in Nevada, we've seen some significant progress too. The governor went through many of these this morning, but I just wanted to highlight a few. First, I just want to say what an accomplishment this past year has been here for Nevada. You guys have done an amazing job and gotten such national recognition, and you are a model for kind of what other states can do to really move the needle in this conversation. So last year, with bipartisan support, Nevada made unprecedented investments in your system. You have over $142 million in early learning, and that was on top of the multiple $1 million you received in a very competitive preschool development grant from the Department of Education. You've also made significant investment in early literacy supports, as well as additional resources for English language learners. You're focused on increasing access to high-quality charter schools and establishing an achievement school district to support meaningful interventions in your state's persistently lowest performing schools. And additionally, as part of your Equitable Access to Excellent Educator Plan, and I realize that's federal jargon, I apologize. This is actually a plan to articulate the steps the state's going to take to ensure that every student has access to a highly effective teacher, regardless of what school he or she attends to. And we ask that you actually paid attention to your particularly your schools with high poverty and high minority concentrations to ensure that they have access to these great teachers. And Nevada was one of the first states to actually have its plan approved within the nation this past September. And as part of that, you really called attention to the steps you guys are taking with your strategies to implement financial incentives to reward teachers for exceptional work and to encourage excellent educators to remain in the highest need schools. Your state's new law established a performance-based system for recruitment and retention and teachers and administrators focused on the lowest performing schools where we know the students need it the most. And that actually became a model that at the Department of Education, we pointed other states to come and learn from about what they can do to think about strategies within their state. So I applaud you, I applaud your leadership, and I applaud your dedication, but just also know that this is just the beginning. That as you continue to implement all of this work, we're excited to learn how it's going, what's working, what needs continuous improvement, and what can serve as examples to other states and districts. Because while policy is difficult and policy development is very difficult, and coming from a state which can't even get policy out the door, I understand that. I also know that transforming policy into practice is extremely hard work. So we look forward to kind of learning how that goes with implementation within your state. So as a nation, while we've come a long way, we know there's still work to be done. There are still too many children without access to high-quality pre-K and kindergarten opportunities. These years are particularly key for children from low-income families who on average start kindergarten 12 to 14 months behind their peers in pre-reading and language skills. About 1 in 7 students from lower-income families earn a bachelor's degree, as compared to 60% of students from the wealthiest families. 1 out of every 3 Black men in America has been predicted to go to prison at some point in their lives, 1 in 3, while just 1 in 5 received a bachelor's degree. Among the roughly 2 million students suspended each year in the country are thousands of preschoolers, and most of who are disproportionately Black and male. So while we've come a long way, we still have really pressing achievement gaps and needs that demand our immediate attention and support and intervention and great thinking and leading. So this is why the administration continues to prioritize a few big key priorities. The first one is investing in early learning education and support. This is something that we've done some work in, but we know we cannot step away from. And we look to states like Nevada, who are leading the way in their state investment, but also not just thinking about expanding slots, but thinking also about the quality of those seats for children. We need to make sure that they're going and really learning and having high quality instruction in the classroom. We're also thinking about the high school redesign. So we heard a little bit about that from earlier this morning from the previous speaker. And this is about ensuring that programs provide project-based learning, opportunities for advanced and dual enrollment opportunities. And last month, the White House actually had a summit where they brought together leaders from across the nation to think about how we can do this differently. But this type of innovation and great thinking, again, is not going to come from DC. It's going to come from places locally that have really rethought what it means to be in a middle school and a high school in the 21st century. We're also prioritizing college affordability and access. And finally, selfishly, I'm going to just say that we're also prioritizing implementation support. And I say this because I think that this is vital to all of our work. So as we think about kind of the role of the federal government, has anybody in this room ever had any interaction with a federal employee? Can you raise your hand for a quick second? I'm sure it was really positive. So when I was on the other side of this work, every time I talked to a Fed or even a state employee at certain times, it was very either transactional. So it was, this is what I need to, box I need you to check, you didn't fill out your form right, or this is what you need to do to get your funding, or it was a gotcha moment. So it was a monitoring visit or a conversation where I felt that even if I shared a problem of practice, it would come back and not help me get better at my work, but actually come back and kind of hurt me in the long run, because they would come and say, well, you told us this, therefore X, Y, Z. But at the Department of Education, we are really trying to think differently about how we can partner with states and districts to move policy into implementation. So we established the Office of State Support with this direct task, and part of this work is thinking, how can we partner with states, how can we partner with districts to think about better technical assistance, to think about how we can help connect communities of practices together, because there are so few people who are able to see what's happening in Mississippi to what's happening in Washington. So there's real opportunity to make those type of connections and learn from each other and not reinvent the wheel and or make the same mistake over again. And there's also this opportunity to help the department improve. We're only going to get better if you guys tell us what we're doing right, but more importantly, what we're doing wrong. So I open up this opportunity for everybody here to, if you, next time you deal with a Department of Education employee, I encourage you to just give us some constructive feedback, because that's the only way we're going to get better. But as many of you may know as you're reading the news, we also have a potential new education policy making its way through Congress. So last week, the House voted on the bipartisan Every Student Succeeds Act, the rewrite of No Child Left Behind, and we expect the Senate to vote sometime this week on the bill. So as you can see, while we have our administrative priorities, if we do get a new education bill for the P-12 space, it'll be a fantastic opportunity. So from the beginning, the President and the Secretary have said that at the heart, ESDA is a civil rights bill, and any replacement of that bill would have to maintain this focus. After reviewing some of the early language in the ESSA, we see this as a bill that builds on many of the administration's visions for education. The bill helps ensure educational opportunity for students by holding all students to high academic standards that prepare them for success in college and careers, ensuring accountability by guaranteeing that when students fall behind, states redirect resources to what works to help them and their schools improve, with a particular focus on the very lowest performing schools, high schools with high dropout rates, and schools with achievement gaps, so much of the work that you guys already have underway in Nevada. It empowers states and local decision makers to develop their own strong systems for school improvement based upon evidence rather than imposing cookie-cutter federal solutions like No Child Left Behind Act did. Provides more children access to high-quality preschool. So this was a big one for us. This is the first time that ESEA will include preschool programs within its authorization. And it builds on the innovative work of programs like I3, TIF and Promise neighborhoods and establishes new resources for proven strategies that will spur reform and drive opportunity and better outcomes for students. So if this bill passes through the Senate, and again, they anticipate some vote this week, we hope that it'll go to the president's desk very soon to sign. And so I'm sure you're thinking, what does this mean for you and Nevada moving forward? So a couple of things. One, we have many, many more questions than we do answers. So over the next few months and few weeks, we'll be kind of thinking about what this means to transition from old law to new law. But from the beginning, if ESSA becomes law, what happens next will rely on the people in this room, the educators, the district leaders, the partners, and the state and policy leaders. The new law puts in the hands of states the work of creating important systems, particularly for how schools are held accountable for their results. That's a huge moral responsibility, and the leadership of educators and community stakeholders will be vital. So your engagement at the table to think through what's working and what's not working. And this is a challenge where your voices are especially important, is to build on what you're talking about here today and to improve upon the status quo for all of the children and ensuring that there's quality instruction and achievement for all students. And the truth is that while making great progress, we need to use our new education law as a way to get better faster. Because even if we double the number of students from low-income communities who earn a college degree, it would still be less than a third of students from these communities. So let me say that one more time. So even if we double the number of students from low-income communities who earn a college degree, it would still be less than a third of these students from these communities. So that just kind of reinforces the moral imperative to take this potential new education law and think not just tinkering around the edges, but thinking dramatically different about what it means to create the conditions, both in the school and in the community, to really help these students. So this will be an extraordinary year of transition. We'll do everything we can to support states and districts through it. But we are also to look to the leadership here. I'm just going to reiterate this over and over again, because what this new law does is actually put a lot of the decision-making and the opportunities here within the state and at the local level to really think differently about how we support kids. There's a huge opportunity to lead here and to learn from your colleagues across the nation, and we appreciate your willingness to be transparent and model for others. So I wanted just to make sure I gave you the brief high-level overview of what was going on. I am happy to answer any questions if there's time for that. But if not, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to join you here today. Are there any questions? I'm going to take over the agenda. Yes, please. So the question, just to repeat it for the group, is, have there been any innovative strategies for teaching English language learners? So I would say that what the Department of Education done is actually looked across the nation and look at where districts of different sizes and with different demographics of students have done an extraordinary job supporting both the educators and also the students and English language learners. So actually on our website, we have a number of resources and case studies where you can go to see what's working and give examples of how it can then maybe be transferred into your own context. Because we know that what works in one place won't necessarily work in another. But we try to give as many different examples so we can make that available to the group. Yep.
Your list of achievements by the legislature, you didn't mention the ESAs, the Education Savings Account, which is the single greatest advance probably in the history of
I did not cover all 25, you're right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Sure. So to repeat the question, it was I talked about some examples of multiple measures for accountability. So as many people know, in No Child Left Behind, it was very much you either passed the cut score, you didn't pass the cut score, and if you didn't pass it, your school missed AYP for all students or subgroups. And it was just based on proficiency. It didn't take into consideration growth at all. So as through the waivers and also through the potential of the new ESSA bill, there's a huge opportunity for states to rethink their differentiated accountability and support systems. So that could be looking at access to rigorous courses, how many students have access and get credit in AP or IB, or take dual enrollment courses at their colleges, or how many students take CTE or get CTE certifications within their school. It could also take into account conditions within the school, so student surveys, teacher surveys, chronic absenteeism, parent engagement. It could also take into account other things in terms of discipline. So are you decreasing your gap in referrals for discipline? It could also look at many other measures of college and career readiness. So I guess what I'm saying is that there's actually a huge opportunity here to think about what works and what captures what it means to be college and career ready in Nevada, and to think about at a school level, what are the measures that parents, community, students want to know about the health and well-being of that school and whether it's right for them too. Other questions? Yes.
Can I ask a question that might be a little blasphemous for this setting? But, you know, the focus of education leaders always assumes everybody has to go to college. And the process is set up and the metrics are measured on how many people are going to college. Why isn't there more of a focus on being able to educate a child in 14 years? If you're talking pre to 12, 14 years is an awful lot of time, and seems to me that we're missing a big opportunity by not focusing on an endpoint at high school for a lot of kids.
So I don't think we disagree. I think while college is right for many, many students, there are also many other opportunities. And so when we say college and career ready, we actually do mean career ready in that context. And so through both resources and funds, but also through convening state leaderships, we've talked about what does that actually look like in a continuum of the learning progression. So not just at the high school level, but at the middle school level, what are the skills and competencies needed to be successful in a career-ready environment? But then we've also partnered with many of the programs that support certifications in the post-secondary environment, and thought about, well, how do we actually make more connections and partnerships between businesses back to high school so they can think about summer internships and career opportunities and the skills needed to be in those environments, as well as partnering with actually community colleges to think about what types of programs they can offer to students as they may graduate high school career ready or take a 2-year community college environment. So there are many different pipelines and opportunities here. I think, again, what comes back to the empowering the state to think about, well, what does career ready mean in Nevada? So what are you looking at in terms of the curriculum within your schools to make sure that students are graduating both college, but then also career ready, and how are you measuring whether that's working or not? And then how are you making the important continuous improvement steps to build on that? Any more? Yep. Yep.
But I just want to commend the department on your White House initiatives. We have been working very closely with the White House Initiative for African American Educational Excellence, and they have been a great support for us here in Nevada for our African American student population. So I just wanted to give you that feedback.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Yep.
So I wonder if you can speak a little bit about early education initiatives and how
Maybe they might be included again in the I-3 grant program. I know they were last time, and we addressed social emotional, and I just wonder if social emotional outcomes would be there again, or early learning and development, if you can expand on that a little bit.
Sure. So let me take a little bit of a step back. So we have at the department many different opportunities to think about early learning resources and support. So a few of them, and Nevada's actually received some of them, are the Race to Top Early Learning Challenge and the Preschool Development Grant. So we have over 30 states that have received those funds to expand the number of high-quality early learning seats in the state. And I believe you guys are in year one of your preschool development grant. So congratulations, and we look forward to seeing what work there is moving forward. In terms of the I3, for those of you who don't know, this is the Investing in Innovation Fund. So this is looking at a local level, so at a district level, what is the evidence for interventions that are working, and how do we scale them to different settings based on the level of evidence. So we are, in multiple years of this grant, looking at not just putting money out there into the ethos, but also evaluating what's working and what's not working, and looking at it at what level of standard that meets, so we can scale it and we can expand it to other districts and states as part of that. So in those priorities of that competition, you'll also see policy priorities of the administration, and recently it was added kind of the early learning priority. So I do believe that we have an upcoming FY, knock on wood, 16 competition, and I actually, because of the rules of the way the competition works, I actually can't get into the specifics of it, but I do hope to see the continuation of our early learning priorities. Okay, well, thank you guys very much for the opportunity to join you. It was a pleasure. Look forward to listening to more of the conversation.